A little while ago, a lot of people were saying that JJK had one of the best power systems ever. So why is everyone suddenly saying that it's one of the worst power systems ever? Creating a new power system is super difficult, especially when there are already so many incredible ones out there. For a while, JJK was actually doing an amazing job, but recently the manga ended, and when that happened, almost everyone said that the final arc was horrible and that it ruined everything that made JJK amazing. But did it also ruin the power system? To find out, I'm going to show you all the things that make JJK's power system so awesome, and I'll figure out if this single arc actually ruined these things or not. Okay. Before we start, I just want to say I'm a massive Jujutsu Kaisen fan, so this is not coming from a hater, okay? Now that's out of the way, here are some sick abilities. This character can switch positions with someone by clapping his hands, and I know it sounds kind of silly and not super useful, but when you actually see it in action, it's so freaking good. This character literally has an infinite barrier around him, which basically means that almost nothing can ever touch him. And I mean almost. And this character's ability is based on gambling, and if he's lucky enough, he can do stuff like regenerate his entire face. His entire face! JJK's power system never had as many powers as something like One Piece, for example, but that's completely fine, because what it doesn't have in quantity, it has in quality. The abilities are awesome and original. And yes, there are also some pretty basic powers like characters that throw fire, but then again, the guy throws fire insects, yeah. So for the final arc, JJK just had to continue doing what it was already doing. I mean, the power system was nailing it, why change anything? So I started reading because I wanted to find out for myself. Okay, so very quickly, in the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, there's this like massive fight between the main villain called Sukuna and pretty much every other character. Yeah, that's kind of the general thing that's going on. And during this massive battle, there's this character who's about to fight, right? And he's not the most powerful character, but he's still really strong. And here's the most important part, he has this technique that he can only use once because it will literally destroy his entire body after he uses it. So yeah, you would expect it to be really powerful, right? Well, he uses it, his body gets covered in this like really cool electric aura, and you know, he runs, he jumps, he throws a couple of punches, but the next chapter, do you know what happens? He gets one shot. This man gets one shot in one chapter. And I get it, Sukuna is extremely powerful, this is normal. But at the start of the series, we actually got to explore a lot of abilities and, most importantly, see them in action. In the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, some characters are defeated so quickly that we barely even know what their powers were. Like this character, he gets destroyed. Or this character, he gets destroyed. Or even this character, I mean, she doesn't get destroyed, but we basically don't really get to see her fight, and I thought she was really cool, so I'm kind of sad. Can you imagine how it feels to be like super hyped up by a character, and then in the final fight of the series, they basically don't fight? Instead of doing what they did so well, they did something that genuinely makes zero sense. It's definitely a problem, but so far, it's only one thing that the power system fumbled in the final arc. But what I'm about to show you is something that JJK is truly famous for. So if the final arc ruins that too, that could actually be the start of the downfall. Okay, check this out. In Jujutsu Kaisen, the power system is called cursed energy, and it's basically this negative energy that comes from negative emotions. And there's a technique called reverse curse technique, which allows someone to heal themselves by multiplying this negative energy by another negative energy, which creates a positive energy and, you know, heals you. But let's forget about this for a second and check out this guy. He's basically really strong and really fast, which in a story full of sorcerers might seem a little out of place, right? But it's not, because there is a thing called heavenly restriction that transferred his cursed energy to his body when he was born. Jujutsu Kaisen's power system has so many rules. Like, look at how much information there is for every single ability. And the techniques are always based in these rules, which is one of the things that make the fights amazing. So yeah, rules are a good thing. They're amazing. But only if you actually follow them for the entire story. And according to a lot of people, following the rules is not something that this power system does. So I just had to find out if people were right, because that's genuinely concerning. Okay, so I'm reading the final arc and they literally stopped in the middle of the fight to explain something about the power system. And a few chapters later, okay, so now the situation is that they basically stopped the battle again, and this character who isn't even in the fight is explaining something about the power system. And just so you know, he's talking about an ability called Black Flash, which I personally genuinely thought we already kind of
knew everything about. But as it turns out, we do not, apparently.
Then something insane happened.
JJK ends in chapter 271, and in chapter 269, they are still talking about the power system. And you know, I think that if you're explaining the abilities less than 10 chapters before the end of a series, there might be a little problem.
As the series continued, there were so many long paragraphs explaining how everything worked. And for me personally, it was really hard to stay interested, especially in the final arc. It felt like we just had to figure out everything. And even if the rule maybe made sense, I don't know, having so many explanations made the fight so much less fun. And you know what's kind of wild? I still don't know if the rules make sense.
And apparently, you know, I'm not inventing this, Gege Akutami, you know, the freaking author, said that if he had to explain the power system to someone, he probably couldn't. So how am I supposed to understand it?
The final arc of JJK definitely followed the rules, it just did it in the worst way possible. So yeah, a lot of people were joking that you need a PhD to understand the power system, and you know what? Maybe it was kind of true. And here's the thing, JJK's power system does something way better than just having good rules, and it's really underrated. But if the final arc ruins that, then yeah, not even someone with a PhD would be able to help. Remember the guy with the barrier technique I showed you? This ability is probably the most iconic ability in JJK, and that's not because it's strong or because the character is hot, or at least, you know, not entirely. It's because it takes this idea of an infinite barrier and uses it in a bunch of really creative ways. He can push things, he can pull things, he can do both things at the same time to create this extremely powerful explosion. He can teleport, he can basically do a bunch of things that are all based in one technique. And I think that's why every fight with this character is awesome. JJK's power system does have a lot of rules, but that never makes it boring, because the author has the freedom to do crazy and creative stuff with all the abilities. To be honest, some characters use their abilities creatively and some not really. And that's exactly why I wanted the final arc to improve this, because the whole thing is basically just one big fight. So I was kind of concerned, because if they made something that was already pretty mediocre even worse, that would really suck for the power system. And trust me, I was not ready.
Okay, so let me show you. This guy's ability is based around a courtroom, and it's genuinely one of the most creative abilities in this series. This guy uses a bunch of different slicing techniques with his sword, and this guy unlocks this technique called blood manipulation, which I personally think is, yeah, the prettiest ability in JJK. All of these abilities were already used before the final fight, and do you know what the difference is between the abilities then and now? There are some small differences, but basically nothing. Like for blood manipulation, for example, you'd think he was going to use it differently or do something new with it. I mean, the dude is literally the main character, but he doesn't.
In the final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, it's basically character fights, they get destroyed, another character fights, they get destroyed, again and again and again, which is normal because, you know, Sukuna, but it never feels like they actually tried something new with their abilities. And I'm not saying they should pull a crazy new move out of nowhere, but the excitement of seeing a character doing something surprising just isn't there anymore. And I think that's one of the main reasons a lot of people say that this fight feels super predictable, which is such a shame because it was the perfect opportunity to nail this part of the power system. So honestly, yeah, maybe even someone with a PhD wouldn't understand why the heck they did that. But okay, there's still hope because JJK's power system does something almost no other power system can do. This guy is one of the most important characters in JJK and goes from being a good guy to a bad guy. And a big part of that is his ability. He can basically control cursed spirits, but here's the thing, he has to eat them. And yeah, I mean, look at them, they're disgusting. So it completely makes sense that he started hating his powers. In Jujutsu Kaisen, characters' powers aren't just for fighting. They influence their personalities, their relationships, pretty much everything about them. And this connection between the characters and the power system is awesome, and it's genuinely not something many power systems do. And the final arc is literally the perfect moment to use this because it focuses on one mega powerful villain, and I want to know more about him. But as I continued watching, I discovered that they made one tiny change that made a huge difference.
Okay, so there's a character in JJK who becomes a sorcerer. And the thing is, he doesn't really want to be a sorcerer. All he actually wants is to live a calm life somewhere far away. And he's just waiting for the day he'll be able to do that. But in the meantime, he has to fight these extremely powerful and cruel enemies. And he's pretty strong, but nothing special. And now, imagine there's a character who's the complete opposite of that. You know almost nothing about them, they're extremely arrogant, and on top of that, they are the most powerful sorcerer ever. And the only thing they want is to completely destroy all the other people. This is literally the main villain of the final arc.
Jujutsu Kaisen's power system was always so good at showing the struggles of characters who didn't have strong abilities. It made them relatable and you genuinely felt bad for them because they weren't powerful. But in the last arc, Sukuna is the star of the show. And sure, there are definitely some really iconic villains like Aizen from Bleach where you basically don't know anything about them. So yeah, it definitely makes sense, but it just feels like such a shame that they went in a completely different direction for the power system. I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of things that the final arc ruined at this point. But don't you worry, we are still good because JJK's power system actually does something that I've maybe seen like 5 times or something.
I'm gonna show you 3 really important things. Okay, so we know this already, but this guy becomes a bad guy because of cursed energy. These monsters exist because of cursed energy. The entire Jujutsu society is created because of cursed energy. Politics, clans, characters, literally everything in JJK's world and story is connected to cursed energy.
In JJK, the power system is pretty much the reason the story exists. And I think this is truly one of the things that makes cursed energy really special. And the truth is, the final arc is all about ending the story. So if there's one thing they had to get right with the power system, it had to be the thing that connects it to the freaking story, right? And did they do that? Well, they did something that I just don't understand, to be honest. But you know what? Let me show you.
Okay, so I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna scroll and pick 3 completely random panels, okay? Okay, right, so this is the first panel and they're fighting. Classic, cool. Let's do it again. Okay, this is the second panel and they're explaining the power system. Nice. Third time. And this is the third panel. They're fighting again. What I'm trying to show you is that I could basically do this forever and every panel would either be fighting or explaining something about the fighting.
Before the battle even starts, the clans are destroyed. The Jujutsu Society is destroyed. Pretty much everything is destroyed. And yeah, I mean, I get it. It's the final arc. But at the same time, Sukuna is from 1,000 years ago. So I just wish we had discovered more about the previous generation of sorcerers or about new powers or, you know, just something.
And to be honest, yeah, we're actually getting a little bit of information about these things, but it's basically nothing.
In general, instead of having this amazing connection to the world and story, the power system goes back to being a basic tool for fighting, which feels so disappointing. At this point, it's pretty hard to argue that JJK's power system is better than average, even for me, and I freaking love JJK. And to be honest, there's only one thing I can think of. One thing that every single person ever cares about in a power system. And JJK does this better than 99% of anime and manga. But if the final arc ruined that, yeah, then it's officially Gojo over. In Jujutsu Kaisen, holy shit, does every technique look amazing. Characters use powers in martial arts and this combo just works. It works so well. I mean, there are like 5 legendary fights in season 2 alone, if not more. I'm not afraid to say that JJK's power system looks better than almost every single power system out there. But if the final arc ruined the fights, JJK's power system won't be average, it will be straight up bad. And that is not something I want, so I looked at the entire fight.
Okay, so I'm at this panel and this reminds me so much of Byakuya's Bankai in Bleach. It looks kind of wild.
And just 2 chapters later.
Dude, look at this. They really went all in with the choreography.
But in the same chapter,
look at this freaking panel. Like there's the hand on one side doing the technique, there's a domain expansion, breaking the background.
The thing is, if you can somehow forgive everything that I mentioned before, this is genuinely some of the best fighting you'll ever see. The power system is used more often. The martial arts are going crazy. Every ability feels bigger and more epic. And even though it already looked incredible, they found a way to make the power system look even better. Almost every single fighting panel is a banger. Listen, I could complain the entire day, but the fact is, fighting Sukuna just looks amazing. So with all that being said, is JJK's power system good or a big pile of trash? I know that JJK's abilities get memed on all the time because yeah, it kind of feels like you're reading a dictionary or something, but I genuinely believe that at some point, this was easily one of the best power systems ever because it did a lot of things better than almost every other power system. And you know what? I'll go even further and say that if they had kept the same quality or improved the quality of the power system in the final arc, it would have been better than Stance, it would have been better than Devil Fruits, and it would have even been better than Nen, to be honest. Hey, my opinion. It's my opinion, okay? However, that didn't happen. But I still think Cursed Energy is kind of amazing. So if Stance, Nen, and Devil Fruits are the top 3, Cursed Energy would probably be number 4. Yeah, that sounds good, which is just kind of sad. But you know what? That's okay, because now that it's over, I can actually finally start learning the rules. Okay,